The storm started before the rain ever touched the ground. It began in the trembling breath she took, in the way her eyes softened as if releasing a weight she had carried for far too long. That evening, under the fading gold of a reluctant sunset, she stood in front of me with a fear so raw and quiet it could break the strongest heart. I could sense the truth rising in her like a tide she could no longer hold back. She had been fighting a battle I never fully saw, a storm inside her soul, and now it was finally cracking open. Her hands shook, her shoulders tightened, and her voice, fragile but determined, revealed the heaviness she had lived with. And as she confessed the secret that had shaped her life, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is open the door to who they truly are. The world might judge, people might misunderstand, but the heart just wants to be free. Backhand index pointing. Right before we continue, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles if you believe in kindness, second chances, and supporting people through their journeys. Your support truly changes lives. What she revealed that day wasn't just a confession, it was a lifetime of hiding, of bending herself into shapes that made others comfortable, of burying pieces of her identity because the world around her had taught her that being her true self was dangerous. Growing up, she had been the quiet one, the observant one, the girl who did everything right because doing anything wrong meant questions she couldn't answer. She had learned to smile even when it hurt, to fit in even when it suffocated her, and to pretend even when the pretending burned her from the inside out. She carried the weight of expectations from a home that demanded perfection, from a society that insisted life fit inside neat boxes. She learned early that if she deviated from the path laid out for her, she would be judged, shamed, maybe even rejected. And so she hid what she felt. Who she was, and how deeply she feared being discovered. As the years passed, that hiding turned into an art form. She made herself small in conversations, careful in friendships, invisible whenever people touched on topics that brushed too close to her truth. Those who knew her saw a girl who smiled easily, who was gentle and kind, who helped everyone around her. What they didn't see was the silent war she waged each day, the fear of slipping, the anxiety that someone would read the truth in her eyes, and the exhaustion of constantly censoring her own heart. She had become a master of masking, but at the cost of losing her own reflection. She told me later that sometimes she felt like she was living inside a glass box, visible to everyone, but unable to reach out and breathe freely. We met during a chapter of her life when she felt the glass box cracking. She didn't say it aloud then, but her eyes often wandered toward the sky as if searching for something, freedom, perhaps, or courage. I saw it in her, even if she didn't realize it herself. She carried the softness of someone who had loved deeply and silently for far too long. She laughed gently but never loudly, spoke with honesty but always with caution. And even though she never revealed her truth outright, there were moments, quick glances, sudden silences, hesitant smiles, that hinted at a story waiting to be told. As our friendship grew, so did the moments when her facade slipped. Some evenings she sat quietly, staring into the distance with a sadness that didn't belong on someone so kind. Other times she changed the subject abruptly when certain topics surfaced, and her voice faltered when talking about herself. I didn't push her, because some truths need patience. I simply stayed. I listened. I created spaces where she didn't have to perform, where she could breathe without fear of disappointing someone. But even then, she continued to hold everything in, as if afraid that revealing herself would undo the very connections she cherished. The night she finally broke was quieter than the others. The world outside was still, the breeze gentle, the air filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. She stood near the doorway, the fading light outlining the curve of her shoulders. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, the kind of tired that comes from carrying a secret alone for too many years. It was then she said the words that trembled out of her like a confession long buried, that she could not keep pretending, that she could not keep suppressing who she truly was, that hiding herself had become a cage she could no longer live in. She said she was coming out, not as an act of defiance, but as an act of survival. In that moment, as she revealed the truth she had guarded her entire life, I felt the weight of everything she had carried. I saw the girl who had silenced her own voice to be accepted, the woman who had hidden her heart so others wouldn't reject it, the human being who had been taught that authenticity was dangerous. She didn't need applause or grand speeches. She needed safety. So I told her quietly, calmly, and with complete sincerity that her truth was safe with me. That this moment, this raw, vulnerable unveiling, would remain protected. That whatever she shared, whatever she decided, whoever she chose to be, it would rest without judgment in the space between us. It would be her story, her timeline, her choice, and until she felt ready to share it with the world, it would remain our little secret. That reassurance didn't solve everything, but it opened a door within her. Slowly, day by day, she began to breathe differently. She started allowing parts of herself to exist without apology. She talked a little more openly, let herself smile without fear, let her shoulders loosen as if the burden had finally begun to lift. She wasn't rushing to reinvent herself, she was rediscovering herself, gently, painstakingly, beautifully. And as she embraced the parts she had long suppressed, her world began to shift. The colors around her seemed brighter, her laughter deeper, her eyes clearer. She no longer existed in shadows, she stepped, hesitantly but bravely, into the light of her own truth. But it wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when old fears resurfaced, when someone's careless words made her retreat again, when doubt whispered that she was safer hiding. Some nights she sat with tears she didn't want to admit were there. Some days she questioned if she was selfish for wanting to be herself. But each time she stumbled, she found the courage to rise again. Not because anyone pushed her, but because she no longer wanted to live a life built on silence. The journey of accepting oneself is never smooth. It is filled with fear, guilt, confusion, and the haunting echo of old beliefs. But it is also filled with beauty, the beauty of freedom, honesty, and the quiet strength of knowing you're finally living the truth of your heart. She learned this slowly, and I witnessed it with awe. Some people transform loudly. She transformed quietly, like dawn breaking after a long, cold night. The turning point came when she looked in the mirror one morning and didn't see a stranger. For the first time, she saw someone brave, someone resilient, someone deserving of love, real love, not conditional acceptance. She saw herself. And that, more than anything else, became the greatest liberation she had ever known. Her coming out wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. A beginning of self-love, of healing, of stepping forward without apology. She didn't rush to tell the world, she told herself first. She allowed her life to unfold on her own terms, at her own pace. And slowly, she built a life she no longer needed to hide from. If you've ever carried a secret that felt too heavy, if you've ever feared being judged for who you are, if you've ever felt the pressure to fit into expectations that suffocate your soul, then you understand the courage it takes to finally speak. And you also understand the profound relief that comes from hearing the words, "Your truth is safe here." Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to The Kindness Chronicles. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need hope, support, and stories that remind them they're not alone.